From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Studying ag close to home.
They can commute in and get their degree and still be able to work on the farm without having to leave home.
What this new campus could mean to many in rural Tennessee. Trending down. Finally, some good news about fertilizer prices. As the USDA issues new forecasts for ag exports and imports, and China's role plays into it all.
It's something we wanted to address, and frankly, that's what didn't get done in the Phase 1 agreement, and I think will be difficult to do.
A reality check about the Phase 1 trade deal, right now on AgDay. Good morning and welcome to AgDay. I'm Michelle Rook. Clinton is on vacation. While supply chain issues have caused problems in all areas of agriculture, USDA is still forecasting record ag exports for this year. It's calling for exports to reach $191 billion. That's up $7.5 billion from February, with corn and soybeans leading the way. But it's also projecting ag imports to be a record $180.5 billion. That's up $8 billion from February. Add it all up, and it would result in an ag trade surplus of $10.5 billion. USDA Chief Economist Seth Meyer says the increase is in line with increased commodity prices.
So the estimates rose for the fiscal year 22 on higher prices as we've continued to see commodity prices rise since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But we haven't seen a lot of other countries back off in terms of quantities taken in, which has been really interesting.
USDA is also projecting ethanol exports to reach a record $3.8 billion, mainly due to higher unit values. While China purchases have been a big part of the record U.S. export figures, it has more to do with growing demand than our trade relationship. You'll recall China fell short of its $200 billion Phase 1 obligations. But U.S. Meat Export Federation officials say it's because they followed the commercial clause in the agreement. And if they hadn't, it would have distorted the market.
And yeah, they didn't make $200 billion, okay? But would we, in the meat sector, but also maybe grain, people in the grain, so would you have wanted Chinese state purchasers to go out and just buy that just for the purposes of buying it, to disrupt the market?
And former ambassador to China, Terry Branstad, says Phase 2 is unlikely to happen.
Because the Chinese government loves to subsidize their state-owned enterprises, which are their champions. And that's market distorting, and it's something we wanted to address. And frankly, that's what didn't get done in the Phase 1 agreement, and I think will be difficult to do.
Branstad says the Biden administration has not shown an interest in working on a Phase 2 deal with China either. So what is the Biden administration doing about China? Secretary of State Anthony Blinken laying out the administration's strategy last week. In a speech at George Washington University, Blinken made it clear the Biden administration is not seeking conflict with China.
We are not looking for conflict or a new Cold War. To the contrary, we're determined to avoid both. We cannot rely on Beijing to change its trajectory. So, we will shape the strategic environment around Beijing to advance our vision for an open, inclusive international system. President Biden believes this decade will be decisive.
Blinken reiterated the point that there are areas of cooperation with China, including climate change, health security, and the global economy. Finally, some good news about fertilizer prices. They appear to be on the way down. One North American fertilizer price index tracked by Green Markets is down 21% from its peak in late March, but it remains elevated. Nitrogen prices are down about 30%, reportedly due to demand destruction and the declining cost of ammonia production. According to Bloomberg, the June spot price in Tampa for ammonia nitrogen fertilizer sold at $1,000 per metric ton. I spoke with Josh Linville, who tracks fertilizer prices for StoneX. He's also seeing a trend when it comes to urea values. He says in New Orleans, urea reached over $900 at its height and now is down around $600. He says many believe the situation regarding Russian fertilizer exports is not as bad as previously believed, and the exports are finding homes in places like India and Brazil. Happening right now, it's crunch time for farmers in the northwestern Corn Belt that are facing prevent plant decisions due to excessive rains that have delayed planting. USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack was pushed on remedies by North Dakota Republican Senator John Hoeven in the Senate Ag Committee hearing last week. Hoeven and other lawmakers in the region sent a letter to Vilsack asking USDA to use the CCC or other programs to cover the discounts farmers will pay on crop insurance if they plant after the final date or take prevent plant.
And so I think it's something to look at because it would actually save the USDA money, save the government money from the standpoint of you're not paying out more prevented plant, you're paying out less by covering that discount, and at the same time you get more crops in the ground to help with food inflation.
Vilsack says they'll consider the proposal, but admitted it may present unintended consequences.
Part of the challenge that we face whenever we get into this particular area is making sure that we don't compromise the relationship between the insurers and the producers in terms of the overall crop insurance program, that we don't essentially create a circumstance where the risk is difficult for the crop insurance folks to be able to calculate.
The final planting date for corn for most of North Dakota and Minnesota was May 25th. So farmers are already losing 1% per day on their insurance guarantee. For spring wheat, the final planting date in the southern third of Minnesota was May 15th. For the southern half of North Dakota and central Minnesota, it's today, while the north is in this coming Sunday. Coming off a warm holiday weekend, are there any changes in the way for the Midwest? Meteorologist Andrew Whitmire joins us with a look ahead.
That's right. We do have some changes into our forecast as we go throughout to midweek, and this time it's centered across the Plain States and the eastern coast here as a cold front is going to track its way eastward across the Midwest, and that's going to end that heat and humidity that we had throughout the Memorial holiday weekend. And what we're watching for the first half of June here is a potential strong ridge that could be building out across the western coast here. Kind of a heat dome is how we're phrasing it. And if that builds, that could lead to trending cooler across parts of the Great Lakes and northeastern states. Here's a closer look at your Tuesday's weather setup. Again, we'll be watching an area of low pressure as well as a lingering cold front that will continue to develop across the northern parts of the Dakotas, the northern parts of the northern plains, and that will begin to track its way eastward, eventually ending that hot and humid weather that has been around throughout much of the Midwest and Great Lakes states throughout the past holiday weekend. Briefly checking out our root zone forecast, you can see those soils are completely saturated still up across the northern half of the Dakotas, especially North Dakota, where they really do not need any more moisture at this point. And we continue to also watch some more saturated soils down across the Ohio-Tennessee River Valley and worsening drought conditions, unfortunately, for the desert Southwest and Four Corner states. And Kansas getting some much needed rain last week. Brian of Central Kansas reporting he got 4.5 inches of rain in the gauge and says he had his first runoff in a year. Parts of Central Kansas are battling severe to extreme drought, so the rain is definitely a welcome sight. I'll have more in your AgDay forecast coming up.
Grains ended mostly higher on Friday with some weakness creeping into the livestock futures. But what's ahead as we start a new month? Markets are coming up. Plus, it's not every day a college adds a new campus. Why this one may be important, especially to rural America in the country. Joining us with this morning's market analysis, Ellen Brugler with Brugler Marketing. Well, as we start a new week and a new month here, let's talk about weather and planting progress. Those are going to be kind of the main focuses for this market, aren't they?
Yeah, I think the market's be very much focused on the weather here. We're still debating how much of the planting delay is permanent, i.e. the ground going to prevent plant, and how much is going to be planted past the optimal dates, which we're definitely in that situation for corn. And looking ahead to the weather, 6 to 10 day gave us a bit of a window here for most of the Corn Belt to get some rapid planting progress. So I think with the prices where they are, we'll see some pretty aggressive numbers. Whether they'll show up in USDA's weekly report today or next week will be the question.
So as far as prevented plant, a lot of times we don't, the market doesn't care as much about the Dakotas and Minnesota, but this year we need every acre. So it is important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very important. we can't afford to give up more than 1 or 2 million acres on either the corn or the beans before those balance sheets start to get really tight. I think that's why the market's been so herky-jerky here, where you see 30 and 40 cent moves in beans without very little basis to them. It's just we don't want to give up that ground if there's any incentive for the producer to continue to plant.
So grain market on Friday, we had soybeans hitting some new contract highs, corn and wheat futures, maybe a little bit more of a down week last week. And so do you think soybeans will continue to score contract highs, and is the top end in the corn and wheat or not?
Well, we got a new contract high in the old crop July. We did not get a new contract high in the November beans on last week. We're still trading within the trading range from February, actually. The market's going to continue to put in risk premium until it's comfortable that we know what those acreage figures are and that most of the crop got in. We do have to remember that there's some demand destruction going on here too. That we are losing some foreign customer buying. The COVID lockdown in China has definitely reduced their soybean oil consumption, things of that nature.
Well, thanks for joining us with that market analysis. Alan Brugler with Brugler Marketing. More Ag Day coming up.
To talk to Alan about his ag market professional services, call Brugler Marketing and Management at 402-697-3623 or visit his website, www.bruglermarketing.com. It's time to sign up for the 2022 United Pork Americas Conference in Orlando, Florida. Register today at unitedporkamericas.com and join us September 7th through the 9th.
Joining us with weather this morning is Andrew Whitmire. And are we going to see any change in this persistent pattern that we've had?
Not likely a whole lot, but we are going to eventually see again kind of things shifting where they've been hot versus where they've been kind of cooler. We're going to see this cold front track across the Great Lakes, Midwestern states. It's going to end that heat and humidity. And instead, we're going to replace that heat and humidity down across the desert Southwest, which is where a heat dome is likely going to set up here as we go throughout the first few days of June. And again, it really is all centered around this area of low pressure and cold front that's going to work its way across the Great Lakes states, and that's going to shut off this heat and humidity. But instead, we're going to be watching this upper level pattern trying to develop out west, and that's going to allow that heat dome to really get underway across the desert Southwest, the Four Corners states. And as we go throughout Wednesday, here we are now flipping the calendar from May over to June 1st, and this cold front will be marching through the plain states. There will be some scattered showers and thunderstorms, a few of which could be on the strong to severe side, as again we lose that heat and humidity ahead of the front and replace it with some cooler air on the backside of the front. And by the time we get into Friday, that cold front completely working its way off of the eastern seaboard, still remaining somewhat mild out there, but definitely no 90s for the Great Lakes, Midwestern and Northeast states. And again, we'll continue to watch that heat building on up here across the desert Southwest. Meanwhile, a few low pressure systems will bring some rainfall across the Pacific North and South and East. Going through this precipitation forecast, again, all centered around where we see those scattered showers and thunderstorms along that cold front. We could see more precipitation picking up across parts of the Dakotas, which again, they really do not need much moisture, especially parts of North Dakota. And again, we could track another round of some heavier pockets of some downpours across the Midwestern and Great Lakes states. We say goodbye to this upper level ridge that has developed across the eastern coast throughout the start of this week. That trough that was out west will begin to crash on down, and we'll be watching another upper level pattern that will begin to develop here across the western states. And if that does happen, we can see it trending a little bit cooler across the northern Great Lakes and parts of the Northeast as we head towards the first weekend of June. And overall, the temperature outlook for June is again calling for above average temperatures for much of the lower 48, and precipitation, where it's been dry, it's going to remain dry most likely, and where it's been wet, we're likely going to see more precipitation. Now let's take a look at your Ag Day select cities. We're taking you to Trout Lake, Michigan. Partly cloudy, few showers late, high 78 degrees. Going over to Nest City, Kansas, mostly sunny, scattered showers and thunderstorms, high 90 degrees. And Billings, Montana, chance of showers.
Thanks, Andrew. It's not just temperatures that are heating up in some areas of the U.S. Machinery Pete is next.
Hot prices on tractors around 100 horsepower. Stay tuned. We'll talk about it.
Got equipment to sell privately but tired of scams and hassles? Visit MachineRepeat.com and click Sell Mine. MachineRepeat.com, the simple and secure way to buy and sell equipment online.
It's not just the big engine tractors that are getting top bids. Machine Repeat has the latest auction results.
Well, folks, I've been seeing very strong buyer demand on good condition used tractors around 100 horsepower, give or take, for the past couple years. Now, of late here, not quite as hot as the higher horse tractors, but still seeing some very strong auction prices. Now, let me give you a few recent examples. On a farm auction last Thursday in Harpster, Ohio, this New Holland TS100 two-wheel drive, which is 100 horsepower, had 2,335 hours on it, and it sold for $27,000. Now that's the highest auction price I've seen on a TS100 two-wheel drive sold at auction with no loader. Now, if we talk a little newer and a little smaller, let's talk Massey Ferguson 4707, so 70 horsepower. Now, in fact, the three highest auction prices ever have all come in the past 6 months, including two recently. Now, here's a picture of a 19 model 4707. This sold May 14th on a Brookfield, Missouri farm auction. Only had 142 hours on it with a loader. Went for $45,500, which is the second highest auction price I've ever seen. 4 days later, May 18th, on a consignment auction in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, this Massey Ferguson 4707 with only 370 hours on it and a loader went for $45,000. Now, if we talk a little larger horsepower, let's turn to the shade of green here on a John Deere 6615. Now, this sold on a May 14th Winchester, Tennessee farm auction. Had 1,875 hours on it with a loader. Sold for $70,000. And folks, that's a record high auction price on a 6615 by $15,000.
The University of Tennessee system recently added its first new campus in more than half a century. Charles Denny reports on why the campus is such an important addition for rural students.
A picturesque college founded in 1870, but with a new identity in modern times. Formerly Martin Methodist in Pulaski is now UT Southern, a move to bring academic opportunity provided by the University of Tennessee to this area near the Alabama border. Rebecca Cronin was a Martin Methodist student who's now a UT employee.
When the transition was announced, excitement was the initial reaction, specifically because I was a student athlete, so we knew what sort of resources would become available to us when we became part of the system and the potential that our programs would get because of it.
This campus has been part of the UT system almost a year now. There are 700 students here, and their tuition went down considerably when this private school became a state university.
Soon, not only will students have lower bills to pay, they may have other options in their studies.
I think one of the great things about being here is that we're able to draw from rural students and give rural students a pathway into more opportunities.
Alan Stanton is director for the Turner Center for Rural Vitality at UT Southern. Already the school offers degrees in business, education, nursing, math, and science. And could agriculture be coming soon? Southern Middle Tennessee is a huge area for farming, and academics to ag here seems like a potential fit.
As we're growing in that area, I think our ability to offer not just the continuing education programs, but hopefully one day degree programs, classes, some certifications, partnering with UTIA to expand our reach to students, to everyone really.
Already, UT Southern and the Institute of Agriculture are connecting, holding in-person and virtual seminars about topics in ag. Hear about carbon markets and credits.
Now, thinking about the communities that we have in that part of Tennessee, strong agriculture there, the importance of natural resources, this is a perfect opportunity for us to collaborate and really build new programs.
Kevin Rose with UT Extension in Pulaski thinks UT Southern will be helpful to local students looking to study agriculture.
Especially for those kids that are maybe working on the farm, they can come in this area, they can commute in and get their degree and still be able to work on the farm without having to leave home
People who work here talk about the family atmosphere and sense of belonging faculty and students experience at this university. Now add to that academics perhaps tied with agriculture, a hint of what the future might look like here at UT Southern. This is Charles Denny reporting.
Thanks, Charles. That's all the time we have for this morning. Thanks for joining us this morning for Ag Day. For all of us here, have yourself a great and safe day.